Okay, well, welcome to our workshop. It's great to see so many of you here. I want to say at the beginning, thank you to the B&A for supporting this session and giving us the opportunity to have this workshop. So this workshop is an opportunity for our community, and by that I'm talking about B&A members and B&A 2025 attendees from all different levels and different backgrounds. So faculty involved in education and neuroscience, students, undergraduate, postgraduate taught and postgraduate research, and also attendees and members from industry and academic publishing to gather together to discuss the topic of generative AI and the opportunities and challenges it has for our field of neuroscience. So this is a workshop, and as you'll see on the tables in front of you, there's various materials that we'll be getting into as we move through the session. I will be giving some clear instructions on how we're going to use those. But because it's a workshop, we do expect you to do some work this afternoon. So we'll be giving you some tasks, and some of you will have some roles to fulfill. That will be voluntary, of course. But as well as having a workshop activity, it's also a networking event. And so as you're sitting at these tables, we hope that you'll have a great experience meeting different members and having conversations about the topics that we're going to explore together. So remember, this is about networking as well as discussing and learning about this topic. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of what we're doing in this session, so you know what's coming up. But before we do that, I just want to let you know that there's going to be a couple of opportunities to undertake some activities. So we've got an online poll with Mentimeter. There'll be a QR code for that shortly. And also we're going to ask you, if you can, to use an AI tool at some point in the session as well. So if you have an AI tool of choice, you may start to access it and log in the next 10 minutes or so, so you're ready. If you don't have an AI tool or you can't access one or haven't before, that's fine, because in your tables you can share and do this as a group activity as well. So the session, we're starting with an introduction for 10 minutes, which this is part of. And in that introduction, we'll also run the poll that I mentioned. And each of our workshop facilitators will introduce themselves. So we've got 4 people running this workshop today, including myself. We each bring different experiences and expertise to the topics under discussion. And during the workshop, we will be circulating in the kind of activity times to talk to you and facilitate the activities that you're doing. So you'll get to talk to us, and we'll be in discussion. So here's the outline of what we're going to do. So after the introduction, we're going to have a section which is going to focus on the foundations of generative AI. We're going to look at where generative AI fits into the wider landscape of artificial intelligence. And there's going to be an emphasis on what makes for good and effective use of generative AI. So that's around prompt design. And there'll be a couple of activities that we will do that will open up that and hopefully show us some good practices to follow and to use in our own work. After that section, we're going to move on to the breakout group parts, which is where we'll be doing effectively the teamwork and the group work on these tables. So these will run in 2 blocks of 30 minutes, slight deviation from the plan shown on there. So we'll have a 30-minute breakout, which will be 20 minutes of group work and group discussion, facilitated by our workshop team, followed by a 10-minute whole group kind of feedback session. And this is where some of the work comes in. So on your tables, you'll see a couple of envelopes and some paper and pens. So we'll be using those materials in those sessions. But we also want at least one person on the table to volunteer to be a scribe, to listen and join in the discussion, but to make some notes on the paper using the marker pens. And we also have, there's a QR code you'll see that when you flip over the paper later. There's a QR code to an online Padlet where we want to capture some of the key points that you're putting into those notes on the paper. So this is the type of activities we're going to be doing, and we're hoping that we will be able to open up some interesting discussions around the use the opportunities and the challenges of using AI, both in neuroscience education but neuroscience research. We've got some carefully designed questions in both of those topic areas, and we've designed them so that they're relevant to all members of our community. So be you an educator or someone who's still learning, a trainee at different levels, or somebody who's adjacent to neuroscience but maybe is interested in, for example, from an education point of view, graduate attributes, so the types of skills that graduates are coming out of that you might be looking for when you're employing. So after our two 30-minute blocks, we're going to move on to a final wrap-up session where there's an opportunity to ask some questions, have general discussion, and we'll finish with a final poll to see if anything has moved in the last 100 minutes or so of our activities. So before we have the poll, I just want to do the brief introductions of our panel. So we'll start with me. So I'm Daniel Fulton. I'm a glial biologist. My research focuses on oligodendrocytes. I'm very interested in the fundamental mechanisms that drive those cells to develop and myelinate axons. I'm very interested in studying their morphology and looking at how that changes with injury or with changes in circuit and neuronal activity. But from the workshop point of view, I also have a role in academic integrity. So at my University of Birmingham, I am the lead for academic integrity in College of Medicine and Health. So I oversee academic integrity across a broad range of undergraduate and postgraduate programs. And in that space, generative AI has become a very live topic, as you can well imagine. So I've been heavily involved in lots of meetings, workshops and research projects looking at AI, hence the inspiration for this workshop today. So moving on, my co-chair is Dr. Joanna Riddick-Contreras. And Jo, you're just going to introduce yourself now.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. It's lovely to see so many familiar faces and a great audience on such a sunny day. So I hold the position of Deputy Dean for Undergraduate Education at Queen Mary University. And I'm really interested to kind of hear from all of you kind of how you feel about AI, how it can impact research, education. And the one thing I think I've kind of taken away is that we don't know what skills our graduates need. So I'm really interested to hear actually, you know, if you are a senior academic or you're in industry, we really want to hear. Something that Daniel didn't mention that we'd be really keen to do is actually, following this workshop, we'd like to write up the findings of our discussions and share that obviously with the wider neuroscience community, because this is obviously just a subset of individuals who are interested. So that obviously will be anonymous. So anything you write today, we won't disclose who has said what, but we just want to kind of gauge how as a community we feel about the impact of generative AI. And just to say, at Queen Mary, we do now have like an institute for AI in education, and that's really at the forefront of really seeing how we can use AI for good. So there's lots of, obviously it's lots of change, but we're really kind of eager to integrate that both in our education and our research offerings.
Over to Mike Ashby now.
No.
Over to
Hang
you. Over to Lujana. We're sitting in the wrong order.
Sorry.
Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here today with a different audience to learn a lot from. My name is Lujana Kurwat from University of Birmingham. I'm an electronic engineer, but then I had the master's degree in education leadership and been working in the use of technology for assessments and curriculum design for the past 11, 12 years. Now I'm doing my PhD around the use of artificial intelligence in higher education, specifically in assessments and feedback. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Lujana. And now over to...
Yeah, hello. So I'm Mike Ashby. I'm very pleased to be here and part of the team here to try and help facilitate this workshop. I think it's a very important topic, and it relates to my work and perspective as a neuroscientist in several ways. And I've kind of listed the framework slightly to remind me here, but I'm a neuroscientist who runs a lab at the University of Bristol. We work on synapses and circuits to do with early life development of the brain and in neurodegeneration, changes in neurodegeneration. So AI is coming into our research all the time. My lab routinely use AI to help them with coding and that sort of thing. We use it for data analysis as well. So, and we're reaching a point where we have to consider carefully about where we use AI in our research, what's the right thing to do, and what's the wrong thing to do. I also teach at the University of Bristol, and for my sins sit on plagiarism panels where AI has been implicated in issues of assessment, so I'm interested in from that point of view. I'll drop to the bottom one here. I'm also a member of the MRC Neuroscience and Mental Health Board, and assessment of research funding and reviews are increasingly becoming impacted in our field, not necessarily at our board, I would say, but more generally in terms of people generating papers, but also generating reviews based on use of generative AI. There are clearly some ethical issues around that, as well as practical positives, perhaps. I don't know. That's for us to discuss. And finally, I want to point out I'm a trustee of the BNA, and I have a particular focus on trying to promote credibility, increasing credibility in neuroscience research for the BNA. And so this is something that our Credibility Advisory Board has discussed about AI use and where it might impact credibility of research. And I think it's really important for the BNA to make some steps and offer some guidance here. And so I'm looking to recruit all you as BNA members to guide us. And so I'll hopefully take some of the things forward from today back to the BNA.
Thank you. Thank you, panel. I'm just going to skip back to the slide where you can now access our pre-poll. So we don't have an opportunity to display the results of the panel of the poll on the screen at this moment, but if you could log in with your phones, we'll guide you through a set of 3 questions. So if you just start to do that.
It's working, which is good.
News. We have about 55 or so people,
Okay.
maybe 60. Does it give you an overall count?
Yeah, 58. Okay, so I'm counting about 58 in the... Oh, no, 59. We have 9 undergraduates, 24 postgraduates, 14 early career, and then about 14 senior and mid-career, and one fortunate person who's retired. So I think the poll is about 63 in total, which sounds about roughly right. So I'll move you on to the next question. And we'll repeat this poll at the end and see whether or not there are any changes in your feelings towards AI.
Hopefully no changes in people's actual employment status,
No, hopefully.
other than promotions.
I think we're... So I won't reveal till the end what the room is feeling, but yeah, thank you very much for your participation. I think we'll move on to...
There's one more for the education. We haven't done the education one yet.
That's what I deleted.
That's fine, we're moving on.
Okay, we'll move on.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. So with the brief introductions out of the way, Luzenia is now going to take us through the sort of fundamentals of generative AI and where it sits within the landscape of AI. And if you're ready. Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone, again. Can you hear me clearly? Great. Okay, so in today's session, we will explore two fascinating schools of AI, because under AI comes different terms that you probably have been seeing during your research or studies. And we picked two of those schools to talk about and see how they differ and where they're being used in today's innovations. So, the first school of thought in the artificial intelligence is trying to mimic how our brain works and trying to be a human, literally trying to see how our neurons work and how our brain work. And I'm not talking about the chemical bit of it, the electricity behind it, but more of the flow of information and how it moves from one part to another. And this one is called neural network, and it comes under the machine learning. Then we have the second school in artificial intelligence, which relies on purely mathematical reasoning and probabilities. And this one is more traditional in the schools of AI, which is called symbolic AI. And one example of that is fuzzy logic systems, and we will see how they work, and we try to learn the foundations of them and how they might shape the future of education and research. Let's start with neural network. Now, if we think of who we are today, our personality, there are many factors have been influencing us and have been affecting who we are today. But two of those cannot be changed, and they do affect all of us. The first one is time, so since we were born until today, and think of this as the x-axis. In neural network, in the world of neural network, this is called layers of information or layers of data. And then the other factor that is affecting us is our network, basically the people around us or the connections that we make with people. Could be our family, could be friends, could be any person that we meet one day. And in the neural network world, this is the y-axis, and this is called nodes. Now, in neural network, to connect these two and get a valid or a good information at the end or a good output, those are connected with weights. And weight is a number that decides how much is being spent with that node in that specific time span that affects the output. And we'll see how that comes at the end. In the second school, now, one drawback of the neural network, the previous one, there's a drawback of this one, that the outcome is always binary. So it's either yes, no, cold, hot. It's a picture of a cat or no. Yes, no, 0, 1. And that's how it is. That's how it works, and that's the output that it will give. That's how neural network work. Where the fuzzy logic systems, which are the symbolic AI, work a bit differently. So they give you shades of gray. They give you a percentage of an output. So it tells you, if you give it a picture of a cat, it would tell you, and you ask, is this a cat? Then the system will say 70% a cat. So it will give you a degree of truth to the prompt that you're giving to the machine. And it purely uses predefined rules that are defined by the developers, so it doesn't really rely on the data like neural network. So neural network is all about data. fuzzy logic and the symbolic AI is purely numbers and rules made by us. Okay, so which school is dominating today's field of AI? So this question will remain the same for years and years, but the answer will be different every day, might be even every second with this evolving AI. But the simple answer to this today, right now, is neural network. Neural network is dominating the field of AI. Most of the softwares we're using and the platform that we are engaged with that uses AI use neural network. So they rely on data. And that's why, in today's world, the body that owns the data has more power. That's how we define power these days. However, even though they're using neural network, it becomes dangerous when we apply neural network alone without putting any logic with it. So learning alone without reasoning can lead to very dangerous things. As an example to that is the use of smart cars or the automated cars like Tesla or Polestar or else. Those cars, when they drive, they scan the traffic signals. So let's say there was a stop sign and it was covered by snow. Now the neural network machines know a stop sign if it was complete and clear to it. It will tell the driver, or it will recognize a stop sign, and then it will act accordingly. But if it was covered in snow, like I said, nothing will give you an accurate answer unless it's a symbolic AI or fuzzy logic. Because in that case, a human or the developer would be putting things like, for example, if there was an arc and if there was red, then assume it's 70% or 80% a stop sign and act according to that. Okay, so neural network comes under machine learning. Now, machine learning means how the machine learn, and under that comes different algorithms and different ways of putting this. Now, I like give an example to this by thinking of baking a cake. And in order to have a good result, you need a very detailed recipe. Those details written are what we call prompt engineering. So the more your structure of the prompt is correct and the more it's detailed, the better outcome or the better results you will get. In that, so let's try something together and see how prompt engineering could help us understand our role in the system of artificial intelligence. Because before, it was always the developers and the people who write the code who are putting the input in the system. But now, even you as a user, you're the developer. And the better you write your prompt, the better outcomes you will get. So I would like to ask you, please, to use any AI tool that you have on your phone or in your computer. Use your device to prompt to generate an assignment or a case study for a neuroscience, an assignment for a neuroscience case study, or anything that is related to your work. Use your normal way of writing a prompt to this.
There are chairs at the front if you want to come and join.
Okay, now whatever outcomes you got, keep them to yourself, and let's try this. So I'll be giving you a structure because prompt engineering is the art of structuring orders to machine. And this structure, for example, was one of the structured advised by ChatGPT prompt engineering courses. And the developers say that this will give you a better results when it comes to the use of ChatGPT or the use of the related platforms. So if you can do the same thing you did, so for the same thing you were looking for, use this prompt. So first, try to clearly state the purpose of what you need. Then go ahead and specify the type of the content you want. Then define the rules and limitations. So basically, be the symbolic part of the system. Then provide a background. This background could be the audience. I wrote here as an example, audience appreciation. If you're a teacher and you're teaching students, so the output will be different when you specify who your audience are and where, if needed. Then we have the structure and how do you want it? Do you want it like a scenario and then questions? Do you want it in a table? Do you want it in a graph? Do you want it, how do you want it to look like? So please take 2 minutes to do this. Now, if I may ask two of the audience to share their thoughts about this. You don't have to share the exact results or anything. Just let us know what you think. And if you think your prompt was better than this one, or if this one gave you better results, and what was the main difference.
Sure.
I have to break silence, you know. I think your guidance, your prompt performed much better than my poor efforts. I used ChatGPT. The information that I received in my first prompt was really, really useful, but it didn't feel as usable. So it was still good information and it was very interesting, but by providing some context, what I got back seemed to have much greater utility for what I was thinking I could use that information.
Great, thank you.
Could you hear that at the back? Yeah.
Oh.
I think there was one more in the middle here somewhere. Someone? Yeah.
Yeah, I think this prompt is really good. Thank you. The only thing that I did different is that originally I asked it to answer as if it's expert in neuroscience, and I also asked it to basically look at the current journals and see what's interesting and what's of current interest to suggest something that would be up to date, basically.
Thank you. Daniel?
One more just here.
One more.
just to add, yeah, it's clear prompt for me, but I use GPT, and I think the trait that I make my GPT and also the memory that I put on my GPT also affect the results.
Of course. So that's a very good point. So because this is the details of what we're doing and the details of the cake recipe, like I said, there is another prompt. If you try this prompt now with me, please tell me what you get. Now, in the first prompt, I would like you to ask your platform or your software if it could generate an image of a person writing with their left hand. An image of a person writing with their left hand. Now, my question to you, please raise your hand if you got a person writing with their left hand. Still working. Okay.
I think we might have overloaded ChatGPT.
Give it. Let's give it some time. Just a hand. Is it a left hand? Yes. Good. So how many of you got a left hand? Left hand. 1, 2.
Just 2.
Anyone else? No. So 2 out of the total.
2 out of, yeah.
63.
63.
Okay.
Who got a right hand? Okay.
Okay. We'll explain this in a bit. Now, I would like you to try this last prompt with us, please. Prompt it to generate an image of a clock showing any time you choose. 3:30, 2:50, whatever you like. Just an image of a clock showing a specific time. We'll give it some time to generate the image. How many of you got the time they asked for?
I'm not using AI then, I'm just using DuckDuckGo.
Okay. Another algorithms.
It still didn't even quick generate the left hand.
Oh.
So I got a clock, but the wrong time.
You got a clock, but the wrong time.
Yeah.
Is it 10 to 10 or 10 past 10?
It's
I did know. Let me tell you why. Because even though our input, which is the details of the recipe of the cake, is important, it's also the quality of the ingredients that will decide how good your cake is. The quality of the ingredients is the quality of the data out there. And almost all the pictures on the internet of a clock will show, let me do this with my, will show this, which is it's an absolute value kind of function, like a smiley face. And the reason is purely marketing and psychological, because the researchers found that this is the best way to show the clock and show the logo, and that's how they sell it. So this is how data is also another input into that system. So it's not just your prompt, it's also how good the data is. So this will lead us to our last concept of today, which is GIGO. In software engineering, we call this garbage in, garbage out, which means it's not really about what you write, it's about the data used. So if the data out there is biased in a way, and another thing, I'm very sure that you all got a male hand, regardless if it's a right or left, because we said a person, And that's the majority of the pictures out there. So if the data is biased, even if your prompts are perfect, you will get some biased outcomes. So be careful with that area, especially when it comes to the use of it with research or asking it for knowledge, because knowledge is knowing that I read this somewhere. Yeah, knowledge is knowing that tomato is a fruit, where wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. And it's the same concept in here. So I don't think we have any time for questions, sorry, but thank you very much. This is my LinkedIn profile if you'd like to connect. And if you have any questions, and we'll see you around. Thank you.
Thank you, Lejana. I think we all found that very enlightening. And it opens up some of the ideas that I think we will then find useful as we explore in the next part of the workshop, which is our activities. So I'm going to move on from the QR code there to the next session, to the breakout session. So you're all now sitting at our tables, and you'll see around those tables some materials. The first and most important part are the questions. So there are 2 envelopes on your tables. The questions are coded with an E and an R and a number. We've got 6 questions that are education questions and 6 questions that are research questions. And each table has an education question and a research question. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go through these questions as a group in your tables and discuss the question. And we want you to do it in the following way. So in the first instance, we want to gather your ideas, your thoughts from the table on the first question. You can choose, by the way, whether you do the E question first or the R question first. That's entirely your choice as a table. You do have to work as a community. And so we want, in the first case, for you to kind of brainstorm the question through discussion, and to write down, if someone can choose to be the scribe, to write down on your large A3 paper that you've got on the table, what are the ideas, the thoughts that are triggered by the question. Some of you may have experience through your own practice, either as an educator or as a learner, as a researcher, or maybe from the outside as an employer. And so we want to gather those thoughts on the paper. And then latterly, towards the end of that discussion, if somebody could use the Padlet to just add a highlight or 2 from your paper, from the sort of ideas that you've brainstormed together. And so we're going to have roughly 20 minutes to do the first envelope, whichever you choose to do. And during those 20 minutes, the workshop team will facilitate and join you in some discussions. And then after that 20 minutes, what we're going to do is we're going to have a summary session where we want people from the tables to volunteer just something that they've discussed, something they've thought about, something that they've, an idea that's come up, or a thought or a feeling about the question. And so we're going to be capturing that through discussion, but also on the paper. And this will help us to take some outputs away from the workshop and capture this moment in AI and neuroscience. Okay, so hopefully that's a clear enough set of instructions. So now it's the time to turn into the tables, and if you could introduce yourselves to each other, of course, because this is not just a workshop, but a networking activity. And then we can look at these questions, one question at a time.
Some people are leaving. There might be a little less.
Just be small interviews, I think why they just
Yeah, I think everyone's going to use it, declare it, but use it wisely because it's almost becoming a. I think on it, it's roughly.
I'm just writing my questions. Thank you. I thought it was a bit boring at the beginning.
No, I think people really enjoyed the activity. I can see a lot of surprise when you told them what time it was.
Yeah, it was.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I hope I've heard a lot of good discussion going on. Seems very busy. We're going to move on to the kind of feedback stage for this question. So hopefully around your tables you've written down a few thoughts or have some thoughts stored up. And hopefully you've identified somebody who would be comfortable just sharing one or two thoughts from your table. And so what we're going to do is the tables that the facilitators have spent some time with will prompt and lead that conversation. So I think what we might do is start over in the corner where Joe is. I'll bring the microphone over.
Our question was, how are you using or would like to use AI tools in your research? So we're mostly talking about like the limitations of using it and the benefits. So we were talking about how it may not be able to generate ideas, but it can help refine studies that you're planning, or can help refine or plan it and then you refine it. So it's just got a different role to everyone. We were also talking about how that role will change depending on your level of expertise. So a undergraduate student wouldn't be able to use it because they wouldn't be able to refine it as accurately, maybe. And then we're also talking about use in clinical settings based on studies and about how it could be used in diagnosis and saving time that way. So a lot of talking about saving time, being more efficient.
And I think that touched on the idea that for those students who may not be able to use it, it's that idea of what do you need to know before you start using it in your research or using it in your education activities. So is there a need for some foundational knowledge before you're ready to use AI? And I think that's actually a question that one table or two may have had as well. So we'll probably hear more about that. But thank you. Okay, let's move on to Joe, your next table.
This table was quite full, so I didn't join it.
Okay.
So, who would like to be the speaker?
Yes, thank you. So we got a basic summary for this part. So our question is that the neuroscience for research. So we got a summary that still, so definitely, so AI can accelerate our research, but we need to combine with our own idea. We cannot be very lazy, so we need to think, we need to consider the detail what AI generated. And one key point we summarize is that we need to be very careful about what AI generated because they don't care about the copyright. So we may break some copyright and some company or someone will sue us. So we should be careful about what they are generated. Yeah.
Thank you. Exactly. That's a very important thought, because I think several of you will have been having discussions in your questions about what do you have the right to do with the material that you may be looking at. So in peer review, for example, we might be hearing a question soon about peer review or grant review. And similarly, do we have the permission from the creators of that work to feed it into a tool? And what happens once it's put into that tool? Who owns it? Who owns that data? So thank you. Oh yeah, we have another point here.
Just at the end, we noticed there was one more point. We noticed with AI that there's two limits that are key here. One is that it's usually biased to the source of data that it gets it from. So when it comes to, like, say, creating a hypothesis, it would most of the time look at past papers or past research and then base its hypothesis on that research, and meaning that the research that you do or hypothesis that it creates would maybe even accelerate the ideas that we have already, that we've already discovered. However, it won't ask any new questions or basically look outside the box from what we already know, or create a question or question anything that we haven't thought to think of before. And one more thing is that we've noticed as you're talking to AI or in a conversation, the prompts that you give, it sort of creates a tunnel vision where it only thinks about the information that you've given, and it doesn't think to use information outside of what you've talked to it about.
Excellent points. I mean, there is the sort of phenomenon of the echo chamber, and if the data set is biased and poorly sampling the available ideas and thoughts in the scientific world, that the answers that come back can only be within a certain constraint. Thank you. I think Mike is going to take the microphone.
Thanks. I just wanted, I mean, that's both tables, really interesting points, and it reminds me of a thing that I came across. Maybe others have seen this just recently. I think it's this year. Google launched a new AI platform called Co-Scientist, where this AI is designed to help you design experiments. So you give it previous data, and it comes up with a hypothesis and suggests experiments that you should do to test it. And so they did some testing on old data from a particular group, and then it successfully predicted the experiments they'd actually done but not told it about, unpublished stuff. So we may be in a realm where that prediction could happen, but you're right, the echo chamber thing, if you're giving it only your biased opinion, I'm not sure how it would reflect a more open intellectual stance, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, I think we have a question somewhere out there that is exploring the idea of generating new hypotheses for research through AI and what that might mean for the future of neuroscience. So I'm looking forward to hearing about that topic. Okay, Mike, since you have the microphone, do you want to talk to your tables?
So the question that we had was, where do we draw the line with AI helping in authorship, like between AI helping us write our like papers, our theses? And I think one of the questions that Mike gave to us was the idea if we asked AI to write an abstract, like so we write the rest of the paper, do the introduction, introduction, discussion, methods, results, that side of it, then just asked AI to finish it off by doing the abstract. Is that okay? So when we were thinking about that, we came up with the abstract could be written by AI as long as AI doesn't add any more ideas, or if it doesn't take any of your ideas or change any of your ideas, as long as it is to summarize it. But then it's also the question of if AI is used to help write your thesis or your papers, is it just giving credit to AI? Is someone else is writing your paper, like it's not your work? I think one of the other parts was you wouldn't, like at a later stage in your career, like say a late stage, like professor or like lecturer were to use AI to write an abstract or to write a introduction or something that they already know how to write, like they've got the experience, they've got all the feedback, they've done their vivas, they've done everything. But if someone at a lower level, like an undergraduate or like a master's student were to use it, then it's like less like acceptable because they're still learning. Like it's like surpassing the system a little bit. It's like trying to like jump a bit. So that whole, yeah.
So it's almost as if appropriate use is stage dependent. So appropriate use might be different for an undergraduate versus a full professor in the senior years of their career.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like when you're learning how to do research and how to perform it, when you get to a certain point, AI could maybe be used to help get a bit faster, be a bit more efficient, but it wouldn't be able to like replace an actual scientist whilst they're learning. Like we still need to learn it. We still need to like get the experience, get the feedback, make those mistakes. But yeah, like it can be used as a tool, but I don't think it should be used early and replace like people learning and getting there. Like it needs to be checked. We can't trust it 100%.
Thank you. Excellent points. Okay, Mike, if you could to the next table.
Actually, just there was one really interesting point here made about you mentioned about credit for the AI, and I think that's maybe something that will come up is like if you use it, and you credit it, is that okay? You know, if you state I've used AI, then you're being open about it. At least would that make it more acceptable? I guess that's maybe something for us to
mull over.
Okay, cool.
Okay, our question was, you're using a generative AI model to simulate a neurological process or disorder. What would your prompt look like, and what challenges might arise? At first, we didn't have a very clear what simulate meant in this question. So, like, how can you ask an AI to simulate a neurological process, and also the goal of this simulation, like for research or something else. And so we came up with a goal, which was to for like antidepressant prescriptions for depressed patients. And if in an ideal world there was a database with loads of data about all of the behavioral patterns, environmental factors, and genetic factors of all of the depressed patients out there, and we could ask AI to predict which antidepressant would work better for a new patient based on what antidepressants worked for previous patients with the same environmental, genetic, and behavioral data. Obviously, as far for challenges go, ethically, there's also many challenges when it comes to mental health, and also the quality of data, and the fact that nowadays, like currently, a database like that doesn't exist, and the quality of data as well. Also, it would be biased more towards some like ethnical groups, because obviously, like even if we could collect all that data, it would mostly be in more developed countries. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a really excellent point, actually, that the any research, whether it's AI driven or otherwise, more conventional methodologies, if it's drawing upon data collections, clinical data, it's the biases inherent in that data that will then be amplified and ring through into the conclusions, and whether those would actually be applicable beyond the narrow sections of data where those data come from. But AI is perhaps amplifying that issue when it speeds up and increases the capacity to do that type of large data crunching. Thank you.
That makes me wonder, because as you rightly say, the bias is there because of the data that we, and actually Lejenia's example of only with the handwriting and it only giving you a male hand is obviously a good example of that. Has anyone ever used AI to tell it if something is biased? Like, is it being biased?
It's not exactly AI, but with machine learning, you can find out essentially what, if you have a large like kind of genomics or proteomics data set, you can use machine learning to find out kind of what are things that are skewing your data that aren't actually relevant. So that could be like the data collection, or if it's geographically and it's not necessarily a biological difference. So you can curate your data with machine learning. So it's not technically AI, but I think we were talking about in our group actually that clinical data, there is so much volume of it now that actually that could save a lot of time and money. So one could argue that actually if you could save lives and accelerate, therapies, etc. Anyone who was in the MND talk this morning, it was quite depressing to think about actually the lack of progress in some of the neurodegenerative diseases. So I would say that if we can accelerate it, there may be benefit there.
Thank you. So I think we'll move on to Lejena's tables. Oh, yeah.
Also, a big problem is the reporting bias, of course, because like we have many more women reporting depression than men, because like the cultural bias and other types of reporting bias. So many people with depression go undiagnosed because of it, and so the database will be biased towards it.
So we had the question, what future skills we want our neuroscience graduates to possess in an AI-enabled world. So we generally thought about the skill of being able to thought-proof AI, basically being able to tell, being able to kind of debug it and figure out when it's maybe giving something that isn't completely accurate or useful. Knowing generally which AI tools are useful for different purposes, because we discussed there might be some which are, like GPT might be particularly bad at finding academic references and writing reviews, but some might be more accurate if they're able to search repositories. knowing how to adapt to new AI advancements and new tools without using them completely blindly, so having an understanding of what they're doing and why they might be useful. Having a basic understanding of how the tools work, so the procedures they're using to generate their answers, whether that's like the predictive tools that we normally have in large language models. And then when we're using AI, making sure we're incorporating it into learning core analytical and writing skills first, about being completely dependent on AI for things like writing, and sort of skipping a generation of people knowing how to do the kind of basic things, I suppose. So yeah, those were generally the topics we touched on. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, one other thing that was very interesting in this table that we discussed was the add of human value into the input of AI. So we have the data, we have the prompts, and there is the human value. And when human values are added to those platforms, there is another definition of it, which is instead of artificial intelligence, it becomes artificial wisdom, which is still under the work right now. So there's no such thing that is 100% working as a human, of course. But human values is very nice thing that you guys mentioned in here. Do we move to the next table?
Sure. Okay, so at our table, the question was, what challenges are you facing with AI and assessment? So we discussed quite a few different aspects. So both in assessment setting, assessment marking, assessment feedback, but also student using AI to answer an assessment. And we talked about so how, whether it's okay to use it to give you ideas on an assessment and structure answer, for example, but not to generate the text that you would submit for an assessment. We discussed that policies varies between schools, universities, and it's not a generic approach, that maybe universities should teach students how to use it properly to prepare for an assessment. We also discussed how generative AI brings or can bring consistency into feedback generation, which might be a good thing, but maybe not. And that having generalized feedback might lack some personal touch in the feedback. Yeah.
That's a very interesting point, Sandrine, because I do think that there's, having been involved in quite a lot of large team marking where multiple assessors are looking at work, there can be quite a large variance in the quality and the quantity of feedback. And perhaps AI provides an opportunity to standardize on those things. But it also reminds me, listening to what you were saying, was that whatever the output is from an AI tool, I think a person needs to read it and a person needs to decide whether it's sufficient or not. And so there's that, and that seems to be a consistent thread for all the different aspects that we're talking about, is AI outputs need to be looked at critically and evaluated before use. Okay, so we're going to move over to the two tables that I sat with.
Thanks. So our question was, what on the education front, what new learning activities have you tried, either as a learner or as an educator? And I think the first thing to say is that there's variance in different institutions allowing for the experimentation with AI. So some institutions are like, yeah, play around with stuff, see what happens, and other institutions are like, we're not ready for this yet, so please do not try in any capacity to teach or learn in that way. So I think that's, you know, we can take everything else with a pinch of salt from there. We discussed mainly around essay writing and marking of essays using AI, and also around coding, and how we prompt engineer for coding, and how whether, you know, using AI to write code now is akin to using calculators, and now we're saying that people don't know how to code, but people now don't know how to do mental maths because of calculators and spell check with Word. So is it as much of a red flag as we think it is, or is it just a new way of learning? But then on the flip side of that, we don't want to replace the learning and disempower people to think that they can't do it by themselves. We don't want a generation of students to be going through the education system and thinking, I only can use ChatGPT to be a student, and there is no student experience without ChatGPT. Around the development of critical thinking of ideas, we don't want people to lose their own ideas, but can we use it as a spark for those ideas? So it debates a discussion instead of you just taking whatever it spits out as verbatim, this is what I think now. We've talked people about the echo chamber, and I think it's important that we maybe say, okay, we can create ideas from here, but let's debate either side of the ideas that are created by ChatGPT to see, do you actually agree with that or not? Because it's fine if you do, but maybe we need to work on it if you don't. Yeah, I think we talked also about the movement back now to in-person exams, and whether that helps the issue of not using any AI anymore, or whether we're just flipping the script again now for people only who are good in an exam conditions. For example, research on women or minoritized ethnic groups that don't perform as well in an exam situation. Now, if we're, you know, devaluing coursework because of AI, are we now just putting the burden back on them? Yeah.
Sorry. So I'm an external examiner, and I can't say which university, but one of their coding modules, they basically had codes, and the students had to say, where is the error in this code? So it was very much a practical-based coding assessment, what I would call kind of authentic assessment. And it was really interesting because I was like, actually, this is what you need. You need to be able to code, but you also need to know what the garbage is. And it's really good. Like, that kind of assessment really enlightened me and thought, actually, no, this is really, really important. That actually, yes, you know, it's great that people can code, but they have to know what they're, like, they have to understand what's, you know, garbage in, garbage out, but also kind of where there are bugs in the code. So I think there are universities out there that are doing some really neat sort of authentic assessments, and that is kind of a promising aspect.
Another topic that I heard over on this table when I was sitting there was, we talked about some of us maybe don't feel confident to do the teaching on how to use AI, because maybe we're only just learning that ourselves at the moment. So there was a discussion around the need for institutions to provide that support, that we might not all be ready to do that teaching ourselves. I just wondered, is that a feeling that's shared around the room? Are people themselves going into classrooms to teach students how to use AI at the moment?
I mean, some of my students are in the audience. I just say, you know, let's do it together, and let's talk about, you know, the challenges and the benefits. So I got them to do their final exam, do an essay plan. I did sort of remind them, because it's open book, if everybody has the same essay, there may be some red flags. But yeah, I think it is in terms of innovation in teaching, it's pushing us. And in medicine, it's really interesting. Like in medicine, there's definitely, I can see that our future. So if any medical students, or you know, there will be kind of big challenges in terms of how clinical practice is going to change. So I think both in neuroscience and medicine, there are some big things to consider.
Thank you, Jo. Okay, coming to our last table here.
Hello. So ours was more about someone reviewing a paper or reviewing a grant application and using AI in that context. A lot of our points have already been raised, but I'll just kind of go through. The benefits were obviously the speed, speeding things up and stuff. But then the big no-no would be putting somebody's unpublished work onto something and then not knowing where that thing is, like without their permission. That if it's a peer review for a paper, this is like brand new knowledge, super niche. So we don't actually think that ChatGPT is capable of that, or ever will be, or should not be allowed to be responsible for deciding what gets published or whatever. Then we came up with some ideas of where it might be okay. So for like grammar checks, or if you just do it yourself and then check what you wrote in AI or something. I know reviewers don't always know everything, so it could be like a technique they don't recognize or something, and it would be okay just to kind of allow ChatGPT to guide them for that, but with caution, because what if it's wrong and biased? Was there anything else? Yeah.
Thank you. And I remember when we were sitting alongside those particular points was this idea that there's perhaps a line of use that's acceptable and unacceptable going across that line perhaps in review. So you might use an AI tool perhaps to help you understand a concept that's being discussed in the grant or in the manuscript that you're reviewing. And maybe that's acceptable to use it as a kind of knowledge check or sense check, but to put the material itself into the tool might be over that line. So it's about the permission, the privacy on that data that's not published, who owns that data, and where should it be released into. So obviously as peer reviewers, we have a great burden of responsibility, and it's a big trust position. So I do think that the future of review with AI in this world is now a particularly hot topic. Okay, so we've heard some really good feedback from your discussions. Now, we did promise that we would open the second envelope, but it turns out the discussions have been so lively and engaging that time has just gone on, and time has gotten away from us a little bit. So I think what we'll do instead is we'll just use the last 15 minutes to explore one more topic and just to take some questions from the floor for the panel. Okay, so the one thing I think we could circle back around to, a topic we perhaps haven't heard that much about, is this idea of AI being used to develop research hypotheses and what that might mean for the future of neuroscience. So I think in the conventional world, of course, traditionally, the one that we've grown up in, science is about understanding, gathering knowledge, and then generating an insight and creating an experiment, a hypothesis, and then exploring it with experiments. But if AI is capable of doing that work for you, of coming up with the hypothesis, of suggesting it for you, then I wonder, what does that mean to be a scientist now in the future? So what are we losing by ceding that activity, that responsibility to machines? So I just wondered, what do people think of that? Has anyone got any thoughts from the floor about that side of your science, that creative side? Dominic?
I think it brushes on like a deeper philosophical issue that society is going to have to address as it comes to AI. It's not just science, it's going to be, at what point do we start to, if AI gets so good and so anthropomorphized that we have robots walking around having conversations with us, able to understand their democratic rights. Do you know what I mean? It's not, we're sort of pigeonholing it in science, and that's what we're doing because obviously we're all scientists, but there's a deeper issue there for me that we are woefully unequipped to address, not only as scientists, but as a society in a whole. And I think that is going to pose some very, very difficult and quite deeply philosophical questions over the course of the next sort of 20 years. Maybe that'll be the next sort of way that scientists explore their own philosophies, you know. Yeah.
I think as well, we have to consider about, we have these tools, but it doesn't necessarily mean we have to use them. And I think this whole, people who are like, yeah, we shouldn't use AI for anything, it's like, well, you don't have to. a lot of it as well is you know, as scientists, part of the joy of the science is deriving the hypotheses and the experiment and how we do it. And if you find the enjoyment in that process, then we don't need the tools necessarily. So I think there's just a point to consider when we talk about AI is the fact that we don't necessarily always have to. It's not something that is necessarily forced upon us, and nor does it need to be. And we can just acknowledge that it may be able to do that, but I find more enjoyment in doing it myself.
There are web browsers you can use that don't provide those automatic AI suggestions at the top of your search, which is a good thing, I think.
Also, I think at the stage at which ChatGPT is now, if you ask him to generate a couple of hypotheses for you, I feel like it's still up to you to decide, because you have like the general picture of what you want to do and all of your background knowledge, what like facilities you have and so on. So maybe you can still use it as some sort of a bullet points generator, but you are the person who still holds the decision-making power to choose this hypothesis or that hypothesis and how to test it. Yeah.
Using the outputs responsibly.
Yeah, still like think about the output and you make the decision.
Thank you.
I think the issues would arise when we are becoming reliant on it, and almost like if we get to a stage where we feel we couldn't function without it. I think that's when I think kind of the problems would kind of arise. And I think as long as we kind of remember that we are the original technology kind of thing in a kind of philosophical way. And I think as long as we kind of remember that, then it's fine.
Currently writing down, we are the original technology.
And just to follow that point, coming back to education, I think we were looking at the question of developing your critical thinking, your critical reasoning skills, which we traditionally do by reading those papers and learning about the topics and using that knowledge, and then you develop that critical skill. But if the AI is doing that work for you, then are we learning any more of those skills? And so I think there's a fine balance between using AI to support our learning, but not forgetting that we need to learn how to do that. And so eventually being researchers capable of having those insights and creating those hypotheses. Who had their hand up?
I still believe that AI works with data, and data always have limitations. But when it comes to hypothesis and research, it comes with idea and creativity. And as a researcher, we have a sense of creativity and idea that cannot be replaced by the AI.
Yeah. So it was very nice when you said that we might lose the enjoyment of certain things when we use AI. But realistically speaking, when we think backwards, so as individuals and institutions, if the workforce or the workplace now, the way it's moving, if we just focus on what we enjoy, we won't be able to work in the future, at least from a personal perspective. So for example, I work on a project with multiple developers. I'm a person who enjoy coding so much. I enjoy waking up at 4 a.m. just figuring out what was the bug in the code and go and try to fix it and so on. But now no one will wait for you to do this if AI is doing the code for you. So more importantly, that you learn how to structure the data. So the data structure and the software engineering is more important than coding nowadays. So it's not really important in a way. So I'm not sure how to put this, I'm not trying to say that everyone must use AI. What I'm saying, sometimes you find yourself have to, like when you have to use a car even though you don't like driving.
I think we've got time for one or two more, and then we're going to wrap up with our final poll.
Thank you.
Going back to the view of as scientists, like Daniel said, I think we can use AI as an assistant, but not the scientist itself, because most of the AI tools that are out there, usually they just skim through other work that's been published and gives us a comparison, and then options like someone in the back also said. And at the end of the day, it's still giving us the choice of picking one of the ideas, which we can later develop into our own idea. So using it as a research assistant is easier and makes our work easier as well. But I don't really think AI is at a stage where it can produce original work. And also, all of the work that is given to AI is, again, human intelligence. So I think it's not really taking away a lot from the humanity, like a lot of people are thinking that it will take over the world. My opinion about it is a bit different, because for it to take over the world, there has to be a crazy mad scientist who wants that to happen. As long as no one like that exists, I think we're in good hands. But again, in scientists' point of view, I think it won't really take over the research industry.
It talks about exactly what you just said.
I'm working in a pharmaceutical company, and so we are actually not allowed to use AI because we don't want any of the question or the prompt that we have to be in the public system. But I think I just want to bring the point of view of the patient. So for us, the patient is, our primary focus, and as a scientist, I don't feel diminished if I use AI to get better ideas or more ideas, and then I can sort them according to what I think is valuable. But I think to the patient, we owe them to be the fastest that we can to get to maybe an hypothesis and then test it. So that for me, that's where AI would be really critical. But of course, there are some drawbacks.
That's an excellent point. It really draws us back to the idea that we want to harness the benefits and the opportunities of AI, but making sure that the use is acceptable and appropriate as well. I think, what time do we have left?
We only have 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay, I think we can keep going. We want to end with the poll, so we need to keep some time for that.
Thank you. I think there's definitely positive sides to using AI for hypothesis generation, but mostly because it can help flag methodological issues or things we haven't considered, and make results more credible. But at the same time, I think we're forgetting that the AI cannot understand actually, and also it takes the information you give it as truth. There was a professor of mine that has worked in schizophrenia for 50 years and has told us that 50 years ago, we thought schizophrenia was a neurodegenerative disorder. So now we know that it's not, or at least the evidence that we have now says that it is not. But if AI was responsible for hypothesis generation in the past 50 years, we would have never realized that it wasn't a neurodegenerative disorder, because it wouldn't have challenged the previous knowledge that it had. While we human can, because we understand actually. That's.
That's an excellent point, and I think a great point to close on. So the poll is open, and we're very interested to see if anything has moved. Has anyone been promoted? Or
I had a slight mistake that I deleted education, so there's no pre-poll for the education, but I've put the slide in for. So there should be one for research, and then I'll convert to the second one, which is education. So it's about 29. Shall I reveal what the pre said? Okay, so when we asked you at the beginning of the session how you felt about
the future of AI in research, it was quite an interesting split. So about a third of you were hopeful, a third of you were excited, and about a third of you had mixed feelings. So now there's about 44. And actually, more of you are excited, so about 17 in the room. And so it had slightly, the shift has changed from mixed feelings to more excitement. So we will write this up. We'll give you the breakdown. But if I move on to the next, which is how you feel about education. Obviously, there are lots of students in the room, and educators. So it'd be great to see, even if I don't get the pre-poll, what the post-poll says in terms of your feelings.
Sounds like the...
Do you want to?
It sounds like the workshop's had a positive effect on your feelings about AI in research anyway, which is encouraging.
I think if you didn't have a chance to speak, or if there's anything else, please just take the link, the Padlet link, and if there's anything you want to add after the session, we would be really keen to hear your ideas. So looking at the post-poll, education is not reflected like research. The majority of people in the audience either have mixed feelings or there are concerns. There's only about 12 people in the room that are excited or hopeful. So obviously, as an educator, I share those feelings, but I think it's really interesting to kind of feel the temperature in the room, although I'm feeling quite hot at the moment. So I think that everybody in this room deserves a cold glass of water after this session. But yeah, it's interesting. And we will be writing this up. So I think if you follow any of us in LinkedIn, we'll make sure we advertise when that publication comes out. But thank you so much for your time. I think we're almost at the hour to the dot. But thank you so much for all your participation, and we've really enjoyed kind of hearing everyone's ideas, and I think it truly has been quite a networking. We've got to speak to people that you might not have met before, so please do share contact details and enjoy the final plenary, which is about to start as we speak. Thank you.